Well, hello there, my waterproofians. Yep, that's a nickname for you. Welcome to Waterproof Records with Jacob Givens. If this is your first time listening, so happy to have you here. And if you're returning back, thank you. I love doing these shows, and I'm happy to have you as my audience. So we dig into albums from the past, present, and future. I don't think we can listen to albums in the future, but we can hope and try. But I am so excited about the guest on my show today. She's a good friend. We met on social media, but we have since become fast friends, and I'm so happy that she's coming on the show today. Her name is Allison Hagendorf, and Allison Hagendorf is a music pro. She's been working in the music industry and around it for the past several decades, and she's been a television host. She's worked with Spotify. She worked in the record label industry and A&R, so she has just an incredible life story, and she's a music lover and fanatic and geek like we all are. So I wanted to have her on the show, and I'm so happy she's here. But before we get to that, theme song time.
Things are gonna change, I can feel it.
If this gonna be that kind of party, I'm gonna...
Waterproof Records. Waterproof Records. Waterproof Records with Jacob Givens.
All right, before we get started, I want to talk about DistroKid.com. I cannot do this show without their help, and I want you to check them out. You need to use DistroKid for your music. DistroKid.com/VIP/waterproof gets you 30% off your first year. Your first year of what, you're wondering? Well, that is where you go to DistroKid.com, the link I gave you, /VIP/waterproof. And when you click on that, you get your 30% off. You can upload your music, and it will be on Tidal, Apple Music, Spotify, everywhere. They have all these cool features that come included with the cost of uploading your song. And this is really your chance to put all that songwriting skill out there for the world to hear. So you should definitely use DistroKid.com. I love them. I think they're fantastic. I put my album out there. The one that I recorded in 2007, I put it out with DistroKid, and it's been great. It's just been a fun opportunity for me to share something that I wrote 16 years ago with the world. So you could be doing the same thing. You could be sitting on some files in your computer, some songs you've been holding onto your whole life. Well, now's your chance. You can let everybody hear them. So make sure you check out my link and support the show. And now let's get into it. So I am so excited to welcome onto Waterproof Records, ladies and gentlemen, my waterproofians. Let's welcome to the show, Allison Hagendorf. I am so happy that you are here, Allison Hagendorf. Yay!
I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy.
My buddy, my pal, and someone that I just love making stuff with. And when you and I started making videos together, and then we joined forces with Patrick Hicks, and then we became this triumphant trio. I knew I needed to have both you and Patrick on the show. And so thank you so much for coming on to Waterproof Records. I'm thrilled.
Honestly, thank you for having me. I am honored. I'm a huge fan of yours and of Patrick's. I love what the three of us have done together and what each one of us is doing individually. It's all about the community and inspiring each other and supporting each other. And it's just like, it's this love fest of psycho music fans.
That is the key word, right. Psycho music fans. And I'm
psycho music fans.
Yeah, I'm sure like me, I'm one of these people that I went my whole life and you kind of assume that isn't everybody like this about music? And then the more stuff we make, you realize, no, not everybody is that obsessive. Yeah. And so they love to watch and hear and learn. But I'm like, for us, it's like your whole life you just spend like dissecting every band, getting all the releases, getting so into it and knowing all the stories and the facts behind the albums. And it's always great when you meet somebody like you who it's like, you're my people. We do this together. So cool.
It's like my brethren. It's yes. Like our people, it's like you said, I always thought everyone loved music the same way I did. I thought that was like normal to be obsessed with music. And then I just realized, well, obviously I've worked in the music industry my whole life. So I realized, a certain breed of person commits their livelihood and their lives to music. But social media has been amazing because you find your fellow lovers that you maybe don't know from the music business, like you know, but we are the same, you know, how music just gets inside of us in ways that it doesn't quite permeate other people.
Right,
you know?
right, exactly.
So it's unique to us.
It is. Yeah. It is. And I wanted to share with the audience how we first met and the first project that we got to do together. We connected through social media. I, of course, knew who you were, you know, given that you had the Rock This with Allison Hagendorf, and I knew, you know, just how much you've been involved. And I really want to hear, you know, your story of what led you to where you are today and kind of the journey through. But we connected, and then we were like, we got to work on something together. We got to work on something. And you were like, hey, we're coming up on the anniversary of Siamese Dream. And you were like, this is a big album for me, and I know it's a big album for you, so let's do something. And so I got a chance to come over to your place, see this wonderful collage of photos and albums behind you in real life, which was just, you know, awe-inspiring. And I get to your house, and you are pregnant, and I mean like weeks away from delivering that baby. You were so close. How close were you to having that baby?
I mean, I think it was literally a couple weeks. I think we were like home stretch.
I was thinking I
could have given birth. I could have given birth while you were there.
Totally. And I'm like directing, you know, the behind the scenes while we're getting the shots of my angle and your angle. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, man, if we rock out too hard, she's going to go into labor. We gotta, you know, it's impossible to not rock out to Siamese Dream, you know?
It's true. That was so fun. I loved it. Fun. I think that really solidified, you know, my love for you and realizing how in sync we were.
Yes.
That's like when I knew.
Yes, absolutely. Because, you know, the social media, you can talk with somebody for years and not really, especially if you don't live close by, you can get to know each other and never really get that one-on-one time. And so the fact that we got this chance to like meet and hug and just be like, yes, and I met your husband, and it was just a cool moment. And we made this video. And so for those listening who haven't seen it, which you definitely should see it, we did this reenactment of two friends calling each other on the phone to basically like go through Siamese Dream, like in real time, track by track.
Yeah.
And it just cuts back and forth to us just losing our minds over each song. And when we filmed it, it was so easy because I would just hit play on the songs right there on an iPad in the room. And the reactions we were giving were just like what you would do in that moment in the song. It was like, this makes itself work on its own because the music and the talent is there from the band. And it was just a cool project to put together.
We're also both just so genuinely and authentically passionate about that band and that album that when I hear those songs, which by the way, that album is a masterpiece start to finish. When I hear those songs, I am instantly transported.
Yeah.
And I get lost in it because it really is timeless and it's just as phenomenal today as it was when we first heard it the first time. That's why I love doing that video with you. So it was fun to like pretend as if we were hearing it for the first time. Yes. But honestly, the music is so powerful that it does sort of feel that way each time because it's so uniquely magnificent. It really is.
So true. So true. And, you know, we could have chose a million different albums. It was just so perfect that was like the timing that we were just talking and it was coming up like around the corner and that we were able to pull it off before the anniversary of the day. And then before you had your baby, which was awesome, we pulled it off. You did not go into labor. And then we
did not.
No. And then we met then, and then we continued to talk. And then I got to know Patrick. Patrick came out to California. You know, he lives in the middle of the country. He came out to California. We got a chance to film something together. And it was so quick. Like we got together and it was in my car, like after we hung out for lunch and it was literally this pocket of time. We're like, what do you want to do? Let's do this. And we film it. And then I said goodbye to him. And then meanwhile, you guys are befriending. So then the trio was formed and we're
Wonderful.
Like, we got to make videos of us together. And we got to do these mixtape videos, which those were some of my favorite. And I think there's probably more to come down the road. It's just, it gets more challenging now because I have a show, you have a show, Patrick has a show. We all have shows. We're like putting out our love of music. So when we come together, it's even more, it's even more special now that we get to come together.
It is so special. It really is. I feel like I've known you guys forever.
Totally.
Just connected through our love of music. It's really so amazing.
It's really cool. So those videos are, we came up with this idea of, let's go back to 1992 and would we pick the perfect mixtape? And we limited ourselves, and that was the hardest part because we were like, you can only
that was impossible.
Impossible. We would choose a song that was like our side A. We gave each other 2 choices for side A and then 2 choices for side B. And we would agonize a lot of the footage that people didn't see, which was us going, I wanted to choose this and I wanted to choose this. And then I knew that I've got to make a decision based on the other choices from you guys and, take that into consideration. So it was the impossible tasks, but oh so fun.
That's when I also knew we were the same because it was painful for all 3 of us to only pick like 2 songs from one of the greatest decade. It was impossible.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then all the comments, people would be like angry that we didn't mention certain songs. Little do they know we did mention all those songs.
Totally.
Sometimes I would just do whatever came to me first, you know what I mean? And not even allow myself to like sit there in it because the 90s in particular, of course, all 3 of us love the 90s so much. But that was like an impossible task. And then equally, I would get excited when you or Patrick would name something I loved. I'm like, okay, good. It's represented in the mix.
It's represented. I know. It's so true.
Yeah.
You nailed it. We would have choices that we would say, and then in the comments later, they would be like, I can't believe you didn't choose this. And it's like, little do you know, like every decision was like, oh, this kills me, it kills me so much. So it's so fun. And I know we'll have more to do down the road. And I can't wait to get the 3 of us together, at some point in time, like at a concert, or it would be so cool to do like,
it has to happen.
Yeah, it has to happen. It has to happen. But we'll find more opportunities to do fun stuff together. We just need to get Patrick out here because you and I, we're not too far.
Yeah.
We can hang out pretty easy.
Yes. Of course.
Yes. But so let's get a little bit into kind of your story, where you were born and raised and the life of music that you have led. You've led an incredible journey from TV hosting to running a hit podcast, working for Spotify, and just in fitness, and just so many incredible parts of your journey. And I'd love to just kind of walk through that with you. So let's start at the beginning.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm from New York. It's called Rockland County, and I laugh. It's called Rockland. You can't make this up. I'm literally from Rockland County, which is like 20 miles north of Manhattan. But I grew up loving music. I actually was raised on like Motown and 50s rock and roll. That's what all my parents listened to, and that's great. So I was like very lucky that that's what I was raised on. And my mother would tell me about like American Bandstand, and I saw reruns, and I thought Dick Clark was the coolest. I loved that he was sort of the liaison between artists and their fans. I just thought the fact that he would introduce new music to the audience was really cool. And then, of course, that became MTV. And I feel so fortunate that I am the MTV generation. And I was glued to the screen, and I just wanted to be a VJ. That is all I have ever wanted to be. Well, besides being a doctor, which I actually went to school to study and graduated with the pre-med degree.
Oh, my gosh.
I wanted to be a VJ on MTV.
Wow.
But, I loved Martha Quinn, and I of course loved Matt Pinfield, and I just thought that was the coolest. But I was a nerd. I was an academic. I loved school, and I actually did go to school to become a doctor. And while I was in school, each summer I would come home and I would just be like, what can I do just to like be touching music? And I literally, my first job, it was a free internship working at Beggar's Banquet. And I would literally stockpile CDs in a back room, literally just so I could be near the music. I would literally pay to commute from Rockland County into the city, and I would actually stockpile CDs. Like,
amazing.
it's That's so like Gen X.
Yeah, that is
You
so
know,
Gen X.
I don't
Gen
know.
X.
I don't know if young people would do that today, but I did it,
Right.
and I was proud of it. I was happy to be like working at a label with like CDs and like whatever.
Yeah.
But what happened for me was I was the Sony college rep,
Okay.
and I won rep of the year. So out of college, I got a job offer at Columbia and Epic Records. And I
Wow.
knew that Matt Pinfield worked at Columbia Records.
Oh,
Even though he
wow.
had nothing to do with the job I was offered, which is an assistant in like
Right,
jazz.
Totally.
I was like, med school can wait. I literally graduated pre-med, was like supposed to go to med school. I was like,
Yeah.
med school can wait. Let me just take this job at Columbia. Let me try to meet Matt Pinfield, and then I could be a VJ on MTV, you know.
Yes, I love this
Very,
plan.
very, very cute. Yeah, very cute. But what ended up happening was I literally created a position for myself assisting Matt Pinfield, which had nothing to do with my other job. And I literally pitched to HR and Matt for months and months. And then finally, we made this position happen.
Incredible.
And I ended up assisting Matt Pinfield. And I fell in love with A&R. I fell in love with scouting unsigned talent and making records. And I became Matt's right hand. And I no longer was doing anything else. I was just Matt's right hand doing A&R. And that was an incredible experience. One, because Matt was my hero, and now we became dear friends.
Yeah.
And Matt and I were attached at the hip. We would go out every night in New York City, seeing bands, you know, going to Mercury Lounge and Pianos and Arlene's. And like we lived the New York City, this is early 2000s, which was an incredible time for music. An incredible time.
It was.
I saw, you know, the Killers at Don Hill's with 3 other people. You know, this is before they've ever played a show. You know, this was like, this was trying to sign the Killers. This is like the time of it was, you know, it was really cool. It was like when all the bands, the Killers, the Hives, the Vines,
that garage rock revival that they refer to it now, which I mean, I didn't remember us knowing what to call it back then, but that was definitely like, you knew the White Stripes, the Strokes, like all these bands were coming out that had this real rough sound, and all of them had the before the name. And it was like, yeah, this is definitely a thing happening right now. So yeah, totally.
You also had like all the cool like dance punk and electro clash, you know, like the Rapture and, you know, LCD Sound System. And like that was an amazing time. So early 2000s in New York City was pretty incredible. And Matt Pinfield and I did it. Like that was our life. We like were out every night till 4 a.m. and then we'd be in the office the next day. You know, it was pretty magical.
That is magical. That is magical.
It was really magical. And then I just got to see what Matt did. I went with Matt to all of his hosting gigs, and I went with him. He was also on air at K-Rock at the time, and just Matt was sort of my mentor. I learned how to make records and be in the studio, like, you know, with Matt. So it was really like realizing a dream, just kind of working with a hero of yours, you know? So I did A&R at Sony for 8 years. So 4 years at Columbia with Matt. And then I went on to Epic Records, becoming an A&R person myself. And that's when I A&R'd bands like Lamb of God. That was pretty incredible.
That's awesome. I'm a fan of Lamb of God. Yeah.
I did the Sacrament album.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it was the first album that got their first Grammy nomination for that song, Redneck. I'm actually in the Redneck video.
I did not know this. I need to watch.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
This is random trivia. I went to the shoot because I'm the band's A&R person. And they were like, actually, Allison, it'd be pretty funny and fun if you were in the video.
Oh my God.
So they literally took a Lamb of God t-shirt. We like made it into a dress for me. And I like, I'm hanging on the bus with the guys. There's just like one scene where I like throw a guy down in front of the bus. I don't know. It's hilarious. I'm in it several times. You could find the cameos.
I am gonna, the moment this interview is over, I am going to rush to YouTube and I'm gonna go find it 100%.
It's really funny. It's really good. Yeah, so I did A&R, and then, you know, of course, I still always wanted to be like a host and be interviewing artists. And where sort of the turning point was, I saw an opportunity when brands were getting into doing content, music content series. And Steve Madden, the shoe company, was starting to do music content. I knew that Steve Madden was a massive music fan. You know, all of his famous platform shoes were inspired by his love of Elton John and Bowie.
I didn't know that.
Steve Madden is a massive music fan.
Wow, cool.
So we launched Steve Madden Music together, and it was this cool idea where we would feature unknown artists on the rise. So I literally did episodes with Lady Gaga, Katy Perry, Jason Derulo.
Wow.
I mean, it was so, and these were like brand new artists, you know?
Yeah.
So that was sort of my first really cool like music series that I did. And then I kind of became this like go-to branded content series person. So from there I did countless music series. So that's when I kind of got like my interviewing going on. And sadly, by this point, MTV had really stopped doing music programming, you know? So I kind of missed, I was too young during the heyday of the VJ. I was too young.
sure.
And then by the time I could be a VJ, MTV was no longer doing that.
I
But
know.
fortunately, Fuse was the TV network that was doing music. And that's where I got my television debut. That's where I got really my interview chops because, you know, you're thrown into festivals and I was doing like, I don't know, like a dozen interviews a day for several days in a row. And that was the first day on set. I literally cried tears of happiness because all I ever wanted to do was to host, you know, a music show and introduce the audience to new bands and new music. And it was really a dream come true. It was like Fuse was sort of like the big turning point for me as far as being a host. It was so cool.
That's so cool. And it's exciting just to see, like, you know, like you said, you went for pre-med and that was the plan. And then you took this one chance to work with Matt Pinfield. And I can understand that because, you know, if that had even appeared in front of my POV at that age, I probably would have done the same thing. It could have changed the entire trajectory of my life because when things like that happen and they're presented, you're like, I can't miss this opportunity. And what's so cool is to see how it just continually, the momentum grew and became more and more a part of your life to lead you to where you are today and getting on TV and being a host and just incredible to watch. And, you know,
thank you. I had to jump on it. I had this like innate feeling that I was really meant to do it. And the Fuse years were pretty incredible because that's when I had to not only get like my television and interviewing chops, but I had opportunities like being at Bonnaroo and being like, Eminem, who's headlining, is not doing any interviews, and then finding out in 5 minutes, Eminem said he'll sit with you. You know what I mean? Like, my God, you know? And for me, like interviewing artists is always about getting that initial respect. You know, you really have to have that trust and that rapport with someone, whether you're doing an interview or going on a date or meeting a friend for the first time. It's really about being present, you know, with that person, kind of getting their trust within a matter of seconds, you know, and moments. So I'm really proud of moments like that with Fuse where I got to do like that Eminem exclusive and just really interviewed Chris Cornell and so many of my idols and heroes. And then when all the music competition shows were coming up, the CW did one called The Next, and I got to host that. And that was with the celebrity judges were Joe Jonas, Nelly, Gloria Estefan, and John Rich. And that's when This New Yorker moved to LA.
Wow. That's when everything changed. That's when you changed coasts. Wow.
That was it. That was sort of like, you know, as a New Yorker, I used to like hate on LA my whole life. You know, I'm such a New Yorker. And I have to tell you, I do love LA now. New York is forever my home and, you know, my heart and soul. But I love LA. But doing that show, you know, it was like a primetime network debut. The stakes were so high and it was incredible. I love production. I genuinely love traditional production. And doing that show was pretty game changing. To this day, I feel so fortunate I got to do that show. The high stakes, and I love it. I get very exhilarated and energized in those, you know, opportunities.
I bet.
It's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. And so that how long ago was that you jumped over to LA?
That was, oh my God, it's 10 years.
10 years?
It's my actual 10-year anniversary.
So it's 2013.
10 years.
Wow.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
I'm glad.
And from there, you know, in LA, Oh yeah, and LA was cool because it was a whole new playground for me physically as well, because I'd always been into fitness. But LA is when I really got more into it. I became a certified health coach, and I got into CrossFit. I actually owned a CrossFit gym. That's how I met my husband. I was doing, modeling for Reebok. I actually hosted the CrossFit Games one year.
Wow.
And, hosted the X Games. So I kind of got into my whole other passion, although music, fitness and that's another pillar of mine. So I got to really embrace that being in Los Angeles. And then Spotify called me.
Yeah. The music business was just like, could not let go of you. They were like, no matter, now you've done a million other things, and the fitness was a big part, but it was like, here you were doing the CrossFit, and then the music industry is like, no, come back. You got us to deal with. So then Spotify called.
It's so true.
Wow.
Then Spotify called. I was full on hosting full time. I was doing my fitness stuff full time. I was hosting series like for Smart Water and Refinery 29 called Be a Badass, where I was like doing physical challenges. I was still a music fan, not a normal music fan. I was still a hardcore music fan, seeing shows and still connected with bands. But Spotify called. It was actually Doug Ford who he managed a band that I A&R'd with Matt Pinfield. So it all comes full circle, know? And he said, we are looking for a head of rock. We've never done genre experts before.
Right.
But I feel like when it comes to rock and alternative, I have to just say if you're interested. And at first I was like, I don't know, a full-time job again.
Yeah, right. You were picking your own hours up until this point. So
yeah, I had a very different lifestyle, but when I heard about what it was and how no one had this position before, and I was like, you know what, this is very special. And you could do anything for a year. I'll just do it for like a year, and see how it goes. But I fell in love with the position. Being the head of rock at Spotify was an incredible opportunity. I loved doing A&R. I loved leading for artists and giving them my everything, but there's only a handful of artists,
Right.
My role at Spotify, I was able to do that for thousands and thousands of artists worldwide every day.
Right.
Putting an artist's song on a playlist is for some artists in certain cases, it's literally what puts them on the map. It's what
true.
Changes the trajectory of their career. It was the most rewarding thing that I did. I ended up doing it for 6 years instead of the 1 year that I planned on.
Yeah.
But my other thing I loved about Spotify was I hosted the Rock This with Allison Hagendorf show. And that brought me, it was full circle. Then it really went back to me interviewing artists and, featuring up and coming new songs you need to know. And that's when I was like, you know what? This Spotify run has been great, but I have to do this type of stuff full time.
Right.
So then I left Spotify and launched the Allison Hagendorf Show, which is what I was always meant to do.
Yes.
And that's what I'm doing now. And that's what I was born to do. I was born to interview not just recording artists and, athletes, actors, personalities. I've interviewed countless types of people over 20 years now. And then I have my sound advice section with the playlist that it's featuring like 5 new songs you need to know this week kind of thing. So yeah, it's been pretty amazing. I'm doing it myself. It's my show, and it's the first time I'm doing my show, instead of like hosting for someone else. It's very rewarding when it's your own show.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud of it. It's so exciting.
I love it. It's great to see, and I love seeing the clips, and you do have a really diverse cast of guests, and it's cool to see. And I think that's a really smart way of handling the show, because music is an important part of everyone's life, whether you're working close to it or it's just something that pumps you up before a game, or you listen to it on set while shooting something or about to do a model shoot. These people are touched and affected by music, and that's been one of the most rewarding things to all of this, honestly, is the reaction that people give me to a video that I make and saying, this made my day, or I was really down and out. And so it's just a nice place to be when you're in a public role and you get to be a part of sharing this music world with people, because it means so much to every individual. And when you have those moments where you look in their eyes and they share that moment with you, it's just it's magnetic. And
it's magic.
It is magic. It really is magic. And I'm thrilled. The show is relatively new, as in it's only been going on for a couple months now, right? When did you officially launch?
Yes, I launched in February. Today was episode 12.
Awesome.
I have 22 interviews banked.
That's
and this
amazing.
this is the long haul. Like, this is really exciting. And, I pride myself in the guests and the range of guests, because it's important to me to celebrate the past, present, and future of great music and that rock and roll spirit, which transcends genre. I know that I'm known mostly as like the rock and alternative person, which I'm proud of, because that is sort of my forte and my passion. But of course, I love all types of music. And when I was at Fuse and the CW and I was doing A&R, was all types of music. But I love that I have, I'll have Sheryl Crow, who is an icon, and then I'll have Nandi Bushell, who just turned 13, and she's, the drummer who did the battle with Dave Grohl, and her first show was with Lenny Kravitz at the O2 Arena, so I pride myself in having, Willow and Paris Jackson and Jax, who is a TikTok sensation, but really, I love telling her story. She's been working at this forever, so I love it's just storytelling. It's really just celebrating the universal love of music and the rock and roll spirit that lives in each of us. So that's all the show is. It really is just a celebration of people's stories and connecting artists with their fans on a deeper level.
Yeah. And it also helps me because it reminds me every time I see a clip of the show to not say Hagendorf, but to say Hagendorf, because I grew up with a girl and we pronounced it Hagendorf. And I don't know if it was just because we're Oklahomans, and when you're in that part of the country, you say, "Hey, here comes a Hagendorf." It's probably something like that, Or I don't know what it was. Or maybe the whole time that we knew this girl, maybe it was Hagendorf and she just, got tired of like correcting people. But so I always have to tell myself, it's Allison Hagendorf.
I love
it's Allison
that.
Hagendorf.
First of all, I've never met another Hagendorf, so I'm shocked that you know another one.
I do.
And second of all, we're probably all mispronouncing it. I'm sure it's like Hagendorf or something, know.
Is
so
it
it's
German?
sort of a choose your own adventure of how you want to pronounce it. Yes.
German surname.
It is a German name. Yeah. So that's hilarious though. Yeah. I mean, it's a tough one. And that's funny because having the name Allison Hagendorf, you really got to like commit to it. You know what I mean? I had to make a choice early on. Am I going to like change my name and create a stage name? I was like, you know what? No. I'm the only Allison Hagendorf, and that's how I made literally my name in the industry. So I'm like, I got to quadruple down on it and just be the Allison Hagendorf Show. And,
totally,
that's my name.
Totally.
And I'm the only one.
I know that feeling too, as a somebody who tried to put music out and am still currently working towards putting more out. I always was like, well, should I come up with like a band name or whatever? And I've just been like, nope, I'm Jacob Givens. And it's crazy because there's apparently a lot of Jacob Givenses out in the world. There weren't when I was a kid, but oh my gosh, I've had people contact me and be like, online, and they're like, man, you have like every single handle on social media. And I'm like, got here first. That's why, because I'm older. I got here first.
That's amazing.
It's
amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I had to become Allie Hagendorf because Allison Hagendorf was just too damn long. It wouldn't fit. So I became Allie Hagendorf, which is fine because people call me Allie or Allison. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah. I've called you Allie, I think. I think I've called you Allie a time or two.
Yeah. Either one is fine. Yeah.
You're okay with it.
It's all good.
Well,
yes,
it's such a cool journey, and now I want to get into, the core of Waterproof Records, which I always ask my guests. I always say there had to be the album. Now, for someone like you and someone like me, it's tough to choose. It's tough to slim it down to one. Because you can honestly make an argument and say, well, at this time in my life, this did this, or I heard this one and it totally changed my life in this way. But usually I can get people to come around to the notion that there's going to be the big one, the one that really like said, I will never shake this feeling, and I could probably describe it at a party for the rest of my life. I could stand there, and if somebody said, "Do you remember when?" I could say, "Oh, I remember." And so you came back to me, and you chose which album?
I even brought a visual. I brought a visual.
Let's show it.
The original Nirvana Nevermind album.
There it is, Nirvana Nevermind. It's right there.
This was not difficult for me because I could literally describe my life before and after Nirvana, specifically Nevermind.
Yes, absolutely.
I think I told you I was raised on Motown and 50s rock and roll, and I grew up dancing. So I fell in love with R&B and R&B pop that was popular at the time in the late 80s, like early 90s. I loved Boyz II Men, Janet Jackson, Michael Jackson, Belle Biv DeVoe, SWV, and Vogue. That I was obsessed. When I was actually a very good dancer, and I was gonna dance pretty seriously.
Yeah.
And I was at a bat mitzvah. This is in April. I can tell you it was April of 1992. And I was literally doing the Running Man to MC Hammer.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, Smells Like Teen Spirit came on.
Wow.
And something happened to me that it was out of body. I'm not kidding. I started grabbing people and just jumping and moshing without knowing what moshing was. I'd never seen that before. I knew nothing about that.
Right.
And literally lost my mind. And at the end of the song, I went up to the DJ. I'm like, what is that song? He's like, oh, it's this new band. It's called Nirvana. Literally had my parents drop me off at Tower Records the next morning. I was there all day reading everything I could about Nirvana. And literally that day became an expert because I think I was there for 12 hours.
Yeah.
I read everything I could about Nirvana, Seattle, grunge, what was happening. Because that's what you knew. You didn't, that's what you had access to.
Yeah.
Was Tower Records and MTV. And I read every magazine, subscribed to every magazine. And from that day on, I became a sponge and wanted to learn everything, not only about Nirvana, I wanted to know everyone who Kurt loved. Yeah. I wanted to learn about the artists that he loved.
Right.
All the covers he did, I would then go learn. I literally learned about David Bowie really because of Kurt. I'm not kidding.
I love that.
Hearing his version of The Man Who Sold the World, I was like, he loves David Bowie. I need to revisit this,
Yes.
And Kurt was my compass.
Yeah.
To rock and alternative. And from that day on, that was it. It was part of me and became obsessed and had to make it my life. And I did. And I have. And I do.
You touched on it perfectly. And you really shared a notion about that time that's so important to remind, most listeners of my show are, from our generation, but there's younger people that listen. And you go, information just moved a lot slower back then. There's no internet. There's no accessing things immediately. So we get the things, the information about the band is I'm at a record store. I'm at a bookstore. I'm reading a magazine. I'm watching MTV. Kurt Loder's breaking it down for me on MTV News. I'm getting it like this, right? And then you have your circle of friends where somebody hears something through somewhere else and you're passing each other stories. You have no way of validating or verifying this tale or this story. It's just a rumor. It's an urban legend. And some of those things that we would talk about back then, you would years later, finally go, was that true? And then you go look and some were true and some were made up and stories and, myths about these people. But it's true about Nirvana when it came and arrived in our path. It blew the doors down of all that was happening for most of us kids at the time. And, whenever I've covered this album, there's a lot of these people that come forward and say, oh, well, there was counterculture and questioning authority music before that and punk. And there were so many artists. And I'm like, I know, but guess who didn't know? 13-year-old Jacob Givens living in Tulsa, Oklahoma, going to a school and just walking around with his little backpack and being like, Nirvana, you're touching on that Kurt introduced you to Bowie. That's how it was. We weren't 10 years old and there was literally a YouTube clip that says, these are the top 50 bands that you need to know. You know what I mean? That didn't exist. You were getting things slow.
And you had to seek it out. You had to seek it out. And the thing that was so significant about Nevermind in particular that was different from before is that it made it mainstream. It was the first time that counterculture was that mainstream. Of course, counterculture existed. Of course. It was not mainstream. It was pop music. It was literally pop music. And that's what the difference was. And that's like to explain to people who like didn't live at that time to understand how big it was. This was like on hits radio, you know?
Right.
And it was a gateway where now that made it popular. So like all other bands that we loved could have mainstream appeal as well.
Right.
Like Nirvana wasn't first or any of these things. It just was the catalyst for bringing it to the mainstream.
Exactly. That is
all it was.
Well said, because, and it really speaks volumes as to why Gen Xers and Zennials are the way we are, because there's this kind of like, we won't take shit and we don't necessarily trust all the things presented to us and we got to see for ourselves and we're a little bit stubborn, and it has to do with a counterculture movement that became mainstream. It became mainstream. And of course, people milked it and it went too far, and there were bands being made that you were like, this is very disingenuous and this is like clearly manufactured grunge or alternative, but there was still amongst the entire conversation. And I think that that's why young people now look back at the 90s much like we were looking back at the 60s and the hippie era and that early 70s and being like, that was what a great time. Because whenever the whole world decides at once to go, question everything, like don't trust what's being spoon-fed to you, like take another look, it changes the conversation and it changes the way that we all look at things. And so that's what it did for our generation. And that's why it's become so significant now. Is I think that we're on the edge of that happening again. I think we're on the precipice of a whole generation of young people kind of going, I don't really like what's being given to me by social media, fakeness, like I want real, I want raw. And seeing young people now buying vinyl and going, I want to hold the media in my hands. I am like, yes, it's like we're moving to this direction where kids are going, I need to physically hold the album. And people like you and me are going, I get it. I need to hold it too. I need to have that CD.
I need to hold it.
Yes. It feels
that
good.
Tangible experience. And I also want to say that, we tend to talk in terms of generations. And of course, there's like sweeping generalizations you can make. But Gen Z, there are always going to be kids who don't love the mainstream popular pop or whatever is popular at the time music. Right. And rock and alternative are very much alive. They're just underground, which by the way, it's always been, there's always, it's just underground and those kids are seeking it out. And I love those kids. Like those kids are us, I went to go see recently the band Inhaler, who did 2 sold out nights at the Wiltern. And these are kids. They're kids from Dublin. It's actually Bono's son's band.
Oh, is it really?
They'd be so angry if I'm saying that because they literally have done it all themselves. So DIY and they're so talented. But the kids all at the show, first of all, don't know who Bono is and aren't you? These are kids. You know what I mean? They're not like U2 fans.
Right.
Even if they knew about that it was Bono's son, they wouldn't even care because they don't have that context.
Right.
But the band is so incredible and the fans are so diehard. It was like a Beatlemania kind of feeling. Yeah. And I was like looking around the room feeling so happy and like seeing these young people. I'm like, these are my people. These are like my people. And it brought me so much happiness. So it's still a really great place for rock and alternative. It's just more underground.
Exactly. That you said it, which is there are good bands, and people say that all the time to me. They say, oh, well, it's just not like that anymore. I'm like, no, the problem is you just have to find it. You have to seek it out. You have to go get it. And because we do live in a streaming world, which I mean, hey, I partake in, you know, we were just talking about the tangible media, but it is convenient to be able to, an album releases and I can stream it on my phone right away. So I use the streaming technology, and what it does is it makes it so easy to get all this music all the time that it's very easy to lose or not be able to find those gems out there. And so those Gen Z, even younger rock heads that love or any genre of music that's pushing boundaries, it exists. It's just I think we will see soon it rise up to the loudest point again, because it feels like in the cycle we'll hit that again. We'll hit that same thing where the entire world decides, like, I need this to be the most talked about music and art that is out there, you know? So I think we're on the edge. I can feel it. It's like surging through after.
We really are.
Yeah. After we went through.
And it's really cool because these kids, you know, had access to the stuff we grew up with. So they're influenced by it, but then they're making it fresh and doing it their own way. Like there's this artist called The Dare who lives in Brooklyn, and he's really bringing up the early 2000s in New York. You can tell he's very inspired by like the Rapture and LCD Sound System. And he has a song called Girls, and he's just it's just really exciting because it pays homage to the early 2000s, but then it's kind of like a new, fresher feel to it. So my playlist, the Allison Hagendorf Show playlist, is all new music you need to know. And for someone who's lost and doesn't know where to begin, it's a lot of really good new rock and alternative on it. I feel like, Jacob, I think you would actually like a lot of stuff on there.
Absolutely.
But I have Inhaler on there. I have The Dare on there. It's like really, it's an awesome playlist. But I'm always waving the flag, you know, I'm always waving the flag. And I'm also on a mission to evolve the genre and for people to celebrate where it is today. Because if we kind of just hang on to the greatness of the past, which is great, and it will never be like that ever again. I'm the first one to say you'll never have another Led Zeppelin. There'll never be another Beatles in that capacity. It won't be another Nirvana. Because it was a timing thing, you know? Yeah. But it doesn't mean there's not new great music. And I like to be one of the, you know, the platforms for people to discover new music. I'm always going to be waving the flag for new music discovery.
Yes, absolutely.
It's my way of being an MTV VJ for life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that about you. And I do pay attention to the recommendations that you offer. And I've, you know, because of this, I've gotten better at it, because I mean, I have grown up. Our youth was a little different in terms of how I was exposed to music and what I allowed in. We talked a little bit about this when we hung out with Patrick on Zoom and we were recording those things. You guys had this much more diverse palette of, even when we were referencing those years in the past, because you were allowing, you know, the Janet Jacksons, and he had the hip hop influence. And I've talked about it on the show before about my lack of knowledge on those. And there was a sense, at least in my circle, there was a music snobbery amongst my peers when I was a teenager. There was like this is cool, this isn't cool. And it's interesting because like when I was in that time period, I would listen to things in secret. I was just telling my wife the other day, I said, do you know that like I loved Dave Matthews Band, but I did not talk about how I loved Dave Matthews Band with my friends that I was running around with at the time, because it was like you kind of had to be like, God, here's this awesome band that I love. But if you were to say it to like your other band heads, they'd be like, really? Dave Matthews Band? You like that?
So funny.
Right?
I can't believe that. I never had any of that. I never understood the guilty pleasure. I'm like, what? I don't feel guilty about anything I like. I'm actually very proud that I love all of these things. That's so interesting, though.
It is. Yeah. It's weird, and it's one of those things that I don't have guilty pleasures. People all the time are like, "Hey, what are your guilty pleasures?" And I'm like, in my 40s, nothing is a guilty pleasure. I love listening. You know what I mean? You kid me? I will crank ABBA. I will crank whatever. I will play everything, and I don't have any guilty pleasures anymore. But it was a real thing back then, and it really limited the palette, right? And so as you share artists that you're into and these new things that you need to check out, it's been fun for me as an adult now to flex and get out of my comfort zones and learn more. Now, I have been doing that for the past 20 years, but it is interesting about how when people look at me and they say, you know this era of the 90s, it's because my gaze was very, very focused on a specific corner of it the most, so I'm still learning about artists that I skipped and ignored from that decade. And it's been great. It's been great as an adult to be like, oh, this is fantastic. Why wasn't I listening to this the whole time?
Is there an artist recently that you sort of fell in love with in recent times, like from that era that you didn't listen to then, but now you love it now?
Yeah, there is. Let me, you put me on the spot, the interviewer
I'm
coming
sorry,
in.
I can't help myself.
No, it's okay. I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example of a recent episode. I recently had Brian Vander Ark from the Verve Pipe on the show. He was my guest recently. And he, when I asked him his waterproof record, he said, James Taylor, Sweet Baby James. Now, here's an album from 1970, and I talked about this, so I won't repeat myself too much, but I was like, James Taylor in the 90s was cheesy, like old people rock, and it was like, there he was, bald, and he's wearing his yuppie clothes, and I mean, I wouldn't be caught dead listening to James Taylor in the 90s, and so my whole life, I was very dismissive of anything he would do. And then he chose this as his album. And so this is going to happen time and time again. I'm going to have somebody come on the show and they're going to pick something that I'm like, Patrick too. Patrick chose Notorious B.I.G., an album I had never spent any time with. So he tells me, Brian Vander Ark says, James Taylor. So I listened to the album and I'm like, oh, this is really great. This is a really good album. Yeah. This is a very it's very soft. It's a very intimate album. And I was reading up on it and I was going, here's something in 1970, a completely different era of this artist that I wasn't aware of. So that is what's kind of cool. And then I think in the 90s, I'm trying to think if there's somebody that somebody has sent to me and I've been like, I didn't know about this band or coming in on it. But it's been, I'd say Patrick's recommendation. Awesome. Yeah. It's been
well,
wild.
I always say it doesn't matter when you discover a great album. It's just the point is as long as you discover it, and whenever you discover it is the perfect timing for you. And what a gift it is that we can now access everything, pretty much everything. Like I said, I learned about Queen from Wayne's World, from the Bohemian Rhapsody scene.
Same. 100%
right. So
same.
then I went back and learned about Queen. Yeah. It's one of those things that we would be presented, a movie would have a song on the soundtrack. So then you get the soundtrack and you learn a band. The Bohemian Rhapsody from Queen. It's not like you and I hadn't heard the band name Queen probably said or mentioned, but we wouldn't have the ability. There's no context for it.
There's no context for it. And so it's not like when you're 13, 14 years old, you're immediately looking to the past. You're actually looking straight ahead. You're looking at what's coming in front of you at the time.
Yes.
And so when Wayne's World puts that in the scene, you're like, wow, this song's incredible. And then you learn about Queen. I was just laughing with my friend the other day. I said, I heard Faith No More's cover of War Pigs before I heard Black Sabbath's War Pigs. Like I literally thought War Pigs was a Faith No More song, and then it led me into Black Sabbath. So it's like all these things that you would, or the quintessential Landslide, Smashing Pumpkins. Now that's one that people probably slap their foreheads because they're going, you're telling me you did not know that was Fleetwood Mac?
Wait, you didn't know? Didn't know that that's Stevie Nicks' song?
Nope.
Oh my God.
Because
Jacob, that's amazing.
My parents were not listening to Fleetwood Mac. They were not. You know what I mean? It wasn't in my household. And I think that if it's not in your household, if your parents or family...
Wait, hold on. Have you told Billy Corgan that you thought that Landslide was his song? I'm going to tell him that.
You tell him that for me.
I am going to tell him that.
He and I have...
That's a compliment. That's a compliment.
Yes, absolutely. He and I have never met face to face. The only time we got a chance to wave at each other was last year at the show. He was over there and it was like somebody was like, oh, there's Jacob, the mayonnaise video guy. And he was like, oh, it's like, hey. So we've yet to have that like one-on-one conversation, but I have been dying to say something like that to him. So please tell him. And
I'm actually going to see him soon, and I will tell him specifically about this story. And I think he will be flattered that his version of Landslide is so good that you thought that was his song, which is amazing. That's incredible.
So then I would, not too long after, thankfully it didn't take me to get to be an adult to find that out, but somebody I said, and then that song Landslide, that's such a great cover. And I was like, wait, what? It's a cover? So this is such a good point about the way that we, participated in art and music back then. It's like you kind of had to wait for somebody to put it in front of your face. And I think that that's what's fun about what you and I do, which is we now get to be the Wayne's World that shows the Bohemian Rhapsody to a new generation or our own generation that didn't pay attention. We get that opportunity to share, and we do it in such a way that it's like, oh, I had never paid attention to that before. I'd heard about it a million times, but now I get a chance to hear from the artist that's on your show that's talking about their journey or like what inspired them, or, and so it's just a fun thing to be able to share art with somebody else, to say, you should check this out,
It's so great. And that's why I always ask my guests about their influences. One, because I'm just genuinely intrigued to know, who they grew up listening to. But for fans watching and listening, I want them to hear, if Youngblood was, grew up listening to the Sex Pistols and the Clash. I want young kids to be like, oh, that's cool. I'll go check them out now, So it's sort of like, it's like we're like missionaries, it's like, teaching people, young people of all ages, about great music, past, present, and future.
Yes.
That's what it's all about.
Absolutely. And I'm slowly but surely getting the opportunity to show people I do listen to music outside of the 90s as well, so I like a lot of other things. I just haven't gotten there yet. So it is all about.
Well, I'm always here for you.
Yes.
I'm always here for you as a resource.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And you are a resource. You're a huge resource, and you are for the world as well. People really, you were mentored by Matt Penfield. So you have that touch, you have that look, that gaze that I think is not easy, because to be able to find art and music and things that are coming out that people don't know about, there's a lot to sift through, and it takes time, it takes effort. And I've always really relied upon either, a buddy of mine who suggests something, or I happen to stumble across it, but it's difficult. And I know that most people are like, I want to know new bands. I want to know new music. That's like such a number one question. So you're doing the hard work that nobody takes the time to do. So
thank you. My ears are very fine-tuned now because of my years at Spotify, where I would literally listen. I'm not exaggerating, like thousands of bands a week. I'm not kidding. Like I would literally go through and listen to whatever was coming out that week. So my ears are like, I always say I'm like a sommelier for wine, like you can like taste it. They could taste a wine, they like name all the notes, they like know everything about it based on tasting it. I feel like when I hear music now, I love it. Just because I've listened to so much. That when something stands out, it really makes an impression. That's when something's very special.
You're an ear sommelier. I love it. An audio sommelier.
A sonic sommelier.
Oh,
I think I just coined that.
Allie, that's your phrase right there. The sonic sommelier. Oh my God.
Plus, I love wine. I love wine so much. And I actually want to be a sommelier.
Yes, I actually, that's so funny. I wanted to be one too. I for a brief minute there, I bought some books and tried to study. And I definitely got overwhelmed, and I was like, well, maybe I could move over to whiskey. And I thought maybe instead of doing, because like I love single malt whiskeys as well. And I was like, I'll move from wine, because boy, wine is a vast expanse.
Yes.
Like that knowledge is huge.
So much respect. Yeah.
So much respect for that ability. And so then I was going to do whiskey, and that was just as hard. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to resign to being, I enjoy them and I will drink them.
Same. I like to learn, though. I like to be a student, and I love to learn whenever I can in every area, in music as well. I'm like you, like if someone mentions an artist, I don't really know a lot about them. I do take the time to read up on them.
Yeah.
because music's my study. I
Yeah.
love it. I really do. I know you feel the same.
I do. And it's what's interesting is my life trajectory just led me down so many paths that had nothing to do with music. And here I am back, and it really does feel like coming home. It really, in a lot of ways,
Aw.
it does. It feels like, why did I not involve it? Not that I ever stopped listening to music or bands or, I'm hilariously one of those people that anywhere, in any job I had, I would find some excuse to like, in my little cube while I was working away, find a way to get music in there. And that's been with me my whole life. I've never been able to just like do things in silence. I'm always playing something.
Yes.
But having all this happen over these past few years and having the show and meeting you and having these doorways open, I'm living my best life because this is something that 13-year-old Jacob, who was getting his mind melted by Nirvana's Nevermind, just like you.
Yes.
I'm looking now and I'm going like, this is where you're supposed to be. This is exactly where you're supposed to be. So it feels good.
That's the best feeling.
Yeah.
And with the show, and that's how I feel about with this show. I'm also I love connecting with music fans. I really just love like meeting you and Patrick and just fellow music fans. Those are our people. And I just love to connect with them. And it makes me feel like in this crazy world,
Right.
when you connect through music is medicine, and you find your people and you the shared passion and love of music. It just sort of makes everything okay.
Well said. Well said. Well, I have taken up your entire afternoon at this point.
I love
So
it. I love it. I love it. You know I could talk to you for hours.
We always can, and this is how it was when we'd be with Patrick too. We'd get going and we'd be like, we eventually have to end this call. We don't want to because we could talk forever. So I can only imagine when we get together in person, just the going into the night, drinking wine and listening and going, oh wait, let me show you this. Oh wait.
Yes.
So, got to make it happen.
Yeah.
Oh, but Allison Hagendorf, thank you for coming on to Waterproof Records. See, I had to, for a moment, don't say Hagendorf.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well done.
So is there, obviously my listeners need to check out your podcast, check out your show, your playlist. If you go and find her on social media, she's easy to find. She's out there. You need to be following her if you're not. So please go check out those new bands she's recommending and get some new tastes.
The cool thing is the Allison Hagendorf Show. It's everywhere. So it's wherever you listen to podcasts. And then you can also watch it on YouTube and Instagram. And then socials, it's at Allie Hagendorf. And I really would love to connect with you guys. So please hit me up. I just want to hear what you're listening to, what you're liking. If you have any requests for me to interview an artist or to be on my sound advice, let me know. And I have the playlist. The Allison Hagendorf playlist is also on Spotify and Apple and every platform as well.
I love it.
So
I love it.
all good stuff.
Thank you for coming on. This has been, months in the making, and I'm so happy that you're here. And thanks again for coming on the show. Thank you, Allie Hagendorf.
Jacob, I appreciate you, and you are doing the good work, my friend, and I love you for it, and I support you, and I love us. I always say I love us.
I love us. She does say that. That's definitely on our Patrick Allie threads. She goes, I love us, and I'm like, I love it. So
it's the best.
Well, thank you again for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
What a great interview. I'm so glad that Allie joined me on this week's Waterproof Records. And again, thank you so much for always coming back and checking out the show and spreading the word. I can feel this show is growing and getting more of an audience, and we're getting off the ground, and I have you to thank for that. So thank you for continually sharing, telling people about it, and just helping Waterproof Records become the show that it was meant to be. So I can't do it without you. Again, check out my sponsor, distrokid.com/VIP/waterproof. Get that 30% off your music, getting out into the world. And check every other week for a new episode of Waterproof Records. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time.
Things are gonna change. I can feel it.
If this gonna be that kind of party, I'm gonna
Waterproof Records. Waterproof